to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Many times when I speak with you at a live event or even a virtual Zoom event, someone will ask, how can I work with architects? Well, my guest today is Kate Rasmussen, and Kate is the executive business strategist at Weissmann Architecture, which is a pretty large firm, and they happen to be celebrating their 25th year anniversary this year, so congratulations to them. And another thing that I find that I'm asked a lot is, how do I expand into new types of clients and projects? And when I have that opportunity, how do I know how to organize, propose, and price these projects? And these are some of the things that Kate and the team at Weissmann have done very efficiently and intentionally. So over the years, Kate has gathered some valuable nuggets of wisdom and experience, and today she's here to share them with us. And before I tell you more about Kate's personal background, let me tell you about an opportunity for my window treatment pros out there. You may have heard by now that Vin, Bill, and myself are now partners in Exciting Windows. And our annual CEO conference is going to be in New Jersey this year. That's right. We are having it October 5th, 6th, and 7th, 2021. We're going to be right at the Short Hills Hilton, where we had the very first LuAnn Live all the way back in 2019. Doesn't that feel like a century ago? So if you're not a member of Exciting Windows, you can join us for the first day and a half, all right? To be with us for the entire 3-day conference, you have to be a member. But that's easy to do, and we'd love to have you. Our mission at Exciting Windows is just like it is here at A Well-Designed Business, except we focus on window treatment professionals. At Exciting Windows, we help window treatment professionals build a better business through marketing, through customer experience, through sales, through all the things. Now, 2 really great guest speakers this year that you know and love will be with us. Vita Vykovska is going to be there, and Nicole Heimer, okay? So if this sounds like something that you'd like to do, head over to excitingwindows.com/CEO guest. All right, you can check out the agenda there. Would love to have you. excitingwindows.com/CEO guest. This will be in the show notes as well. Now, my guest today, Kate, has academic and professional experience in all phases of traditional architecture and urbanism. Before her position at Weissmann Architecture, Kate spent 8 years as an associate at Robert A.M. Stern Architects. Kate also worked with the Prince's Foundation for the Built Environment in London, where her projects included the Ellen Pavilion in Ellen, Scotland, and master plans and architectural pattern books for towns across the UK. She also worked at Liam O'Connor Architects on the design of the Bomber Command Memorial in London's Green Park. In addition to all of that, she also has experience as a freelance designer. So I'm delighted to have Kate here with me today, and I'm looking forward for you to hear what Kate has to say about expanding into new projects and how you can work with more architects. Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. Thanks so much for having me.
Kate, this is a treat for me. We don't often get to talk with somebody that works at a firm the size of your firm. Weissmann Architecture is up to more than 40 plus people. And I have a theory on it, though, Kate. I have a theory that it is people at big firms like yours are just too darn busy to sit down and do podcasts. So I'm so glad you're here.
Well, thank you. Yes, it's good to take a break and be able to talk to you today.
Yeah. So, a couple of things that really intrigued me in the information that you sent me prior to the podcast. And one of them was that you talked about you have an expertise in how to how do I want to just phrase this? I'm going to look for the words that you use. How to make strategic decisions when taking on new projects. And what you explained to me is that means not a new project like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you're a new project for me, but a new project with a completely different scope of what you might have ever done before. Tell us a little bit about what that has looked like the example in your firm, and then we'll start to pick it apart on how you do that.
Sure. Yes. So, we're a firm that's well established for over 25 years. Actually, it's our 25th year this year. Um, Primarily working on residential architecture of, all different, and there are scope changes even within the residential side, right? From a small renovation to a full ground up home. But what, primarily that I have been involved with as well is when a new total project type comes in. I think we are all passionate about design at any scale, and that could be from, a really small garden folly to a whole town. And because of Wade's particular interest in that, we've had, been invited a few times recently to take part and be a player in the design side of either a new residential enclave or a development that might have more hospitality bent, new hotels and music venue and master planning, kind of on a much larger scale. And, I think from a designer side standpoint, that's really exciting, right? And then
Right,
it,
right.
then it comes to tying it into the business side of it that is really important when you are running a company that at any scale. And so, we had to take a step back and really look at how do you write a proposal? How do you set out a timeline for something along those lines that you've never quite done before? Um, I think the strategy we took with that was to try to break it down into kind of bite-sized pieces to look at these large scale buildings. We did test against, market research that you can do when it's a percentage base of an overall fee, but also look at we know our staff, we know what we can do, we know how long it takes us to do a, you know, 50-page drawing set. Now, let's take the time to lay out what we think the drawing set is going to be for a much larger project or a scale of a project that is considerably different than the product that we put out day in, day out that we have metrics on. And with that, then we, tied to that time frame associated with each of those sheets
Mm.
and the staff that we know to do that and are able to kind of balance ground up and also top down from a percentage base and try to find that sweet spot where we could break into a new market in a competitive manner, um, and hold ourselves, accountable to that. And so, yeah, I mean, that's sort of how we've done it. And each one, to be completely honest, is you you do a lot of research. I personally do a lot of spreadsheets and using our analytics, and then go into it and see what we can learn from each of those projects. And if we have to tweak it the next time, we certainly would.
Okay, so I want to step back a second and just for clarity, for our colleagues, what we're talking about is a firm like yours, Wade Weissmann Architecture. Okay, so maybe you've done 50 10,000 square foot residential homes before, and another 50 other types of projects. But you specifically have had these opportunities, which were to do an entire town or to do this mixed use of commercial and music venue and residential and all of that. And so what you're saying is, it doesn't matter how good we are at doing and designing a 10,000 square foot home. And if we've done it 100 times, we've never designed a whole town before, or we've never designed a whole enclave before, or whatever it is. And we can't just make assumptions and that we can do it, that it is a viable project for our firm. And as much as you mentioned, you get excited over something that's new and different and challenging, there has to be the setback of everybody that says, okay, can we establish for ourselves that A, we're capable of this project, but B, that it would be profitable for us before you guys all go and say, yes, we want to do it, right?
Correct. Yes. I mean, I think, when you're breaking into a new market, you're probably not going to hit your same profitability margin, but at
Okay.
least you don't you don't want to also have it really hit the bottom line so, too hard. I think especially when it is a much larger project. I do think when you're jumping into a new scale of project for the first time, those that profitability margin might be a little bit lower just to uh, make up for the onboarding of that. But yes, that's kind of the strategy that we looked at.
Okay, well, and that's a good thing to note. I just wrote it down. The expectation of less profitability is okay as long as it's still healthy and viable.
Correct.
Okay, love that tip. Okay, so that's a good thing for us to have in our back pocket to understand as we level. Whether we are an interior designer that's leveling from doing a master suite to doing a full house, we may not make the same profit margin that we did on the last 20 master suites we did. But we still have to make sure that we're making a healthy profit margin as we level up and we start to learn the ropes of that next level type of project.
Exactly. Yes. And I think the same goes for different geographic locations, right? I
Mm.
mean, I think where your home office or offices are based, you might know that building code and the specifics of it, inside and out, and the exact person at the counter to go to get, those drawings through the permitting process. But if all of a sudden, you're we were based in the Midwest and some Midwest clients took us out to California about 10 years ago, which, sprouted a small California office just based on how well the first project went, and how that word of mouth spread after that. But that very first project, there's a huge learning curve, I think,
Mm.
in coastal areas, seismic areas, as much as we all know and understand, theoretically, every new historic district or places that have special considerations, there's a little bit of a learning curve. And so, you know, we personally take the approach that if we want to break into those markets, we don't hold our clients accountable for our education in those areas. We
Okay.
often, so again, maybe the profit margin on a certain aspect of due diligence or something like that might be a little bit lower, but the upside of it is a whole new market that helps
Mm.
balance out, that helps balance you out for the future.
Right. It's almost like you're looking at it as a partial, almost like an expense line of marketing. Like we don't call it that, but in our minds we're like we're building seeds here. We're planting seeds.
Exactly. You're exactly
Okay.
right.
And to your point, so for you as architects, when you talk about the coastal landscape is so different than what you might find in Milwaukee. But for a designer, the other things are also true. So, the building department, I know with Window Works, we literally will, if we have to go get permits for the big awning structures that we do, there are certain towns we're all like, oh, that building department's great. And then we're like, oh my God, that building department's going to take forever. And when you go out of town, you don't know what you're going to run into, and you don't have your homies on the other side of the desk, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah, so that's something that designers would have to face. They would not necessarily have to worry about the topical landscape, but they would have to worry about that. Okay, so that's interesting. All right, so now we have this opportunity in front of us, and you're telling us that one of the pillars of this is that as a company, you intellectually understand that the profit margin might not be as great as if you were doing another project in Milwaukee, that same type of project you've done 10 times over. Okay, but beyond that now, how do you go about you know building an enclave? Like you don't have a process for that established. I mean, what happens in real boots on the ground life there, Kate, when you look at your team of 40 people and there's no like manual for this is how we build an enclave.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, in that particular instance, we relied on um, expertise, within our staff, people that, at the heart of it, sometimes some of our large 10,000 square foot houses aren't that much different than a hotel or,
Okay. Right.
a building like that. But no, there is a key difference when it comes to if it's developer driven, versus a homeowner driven. There's a fundamental difference, that I'm sure everybody understands, from design to in the architectural and design world, that, developers want something that's beautiful and, it feels unique and different. But at the end of the day, they have to look at the bottom line,
Mm.
as it's a really important part of success of the project to them. And some clients on their homes might think of that in the same way, where the bottom line is going to equate the success of the project. And other times, the luxury side, or the way they feel at the end of the project, means more than the bottom line. And
Mm.
so I think that, how did we boots on the ground? So some of it was relying on staff that we had that, maybe had worked on projects like that in the past. We, talked to a lot of other firms of exactly how they lay certain elements and things out. And then, we really dove into each building type. Uh, and I think, when you take what you learn about a house and apply it on a larger scale project, there are fundamental aspects to, how you design, detail, and invest in a commercial project that's different than a residential. Meaning, maybe it's certain items that you actually touch and are as close to, or a lobby, and certain spaces maybe are your wow moments. And
Mm.
then you can't have the whole building be wow moments, or you're
Mm.
not going to hit the bottom line of
Right.
the for the developer. And so, sometimes we'll even diagram out the building and say, here's our A level finishes, here are the B, and here's sort of the support C spaces that, we're not, that's are going to be just very simple spaces where we're not going to spend the time drawing and designing them, nor are we going to spend the time of the craftspeople building them. So yeah, I mean, I think it was taking a complex project like that, knowing, based on what we know, relying on past experiences and asking questions where we needed to, I think led to the success of sort of jumping scales into new project types.
Mm. So if I just recap this a little bit here, you're saying to begin with, to one step beyond that, before that, is when you are thinking about proposing for this project and actually gathering the information for the proposal. What you said in there is you're going back to your past data when you said, well, we know what our team hours look like when we put together a 50-page project, which I'm sure just that means whatever in your world, right? Maybe that means that 10,000 square foot house, right? And this is going to be, maybe this is going to be a 200-page project. So you're relying on your data and extrapolating it out. So we're not just saying it'll probably cost this much, right? So it's the lesson to the rest of us at how critical it is to always be collecting our data as we grow our businesses. Is that correct, Kate?
Correct. Yes. I think the more we analyze at the end of a project, what went well, what didn't go well, from design to schedule to communication, and then at the heart of it, then profitability.
Right. I always call that the autopsy. I've said to the designers, for years, you got to do the autopsy of the project. You know what I
Yes.
mean? What went well? What went well? And was it because of us? And were we lucky? Or we do it on purpose? Can we do it again? Right. And what didn't go well? And was it because of us? And could we change it? Or is it someone else? And we can affect a change on that other trade or that other thing. Right. And also to that point, did we make money on this project? Maybe it looks great. Maybe we love it. Maybe the client loves it, but maybe we didn't make enough money on it. And if we're going to do that kind of project again, we got to change our pricing structure on it, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so now that was the pre-step. That was the pre-step. The pre-step is to go back to past data, come up with a proposal, and you're breaking it apart. And then what you said in there is that, when you're doing a project that you've never done before, whether you're building a town or you're just doing a whole house, right, for the first time, you're looking around at the eyeballs that you've got, the expertise of your staff. Who has some relatable or transferable skill or talent or knowledge that we can call on to, put the proposal together or to actually do the work during the project. And then you also mentioned that you reached out to other architectural firms. And tell me what that looks like. You're in Milwaukee. Do you call a colleague in New York? I mean, the world is so global now. So you have an opportunity it's not like, 20 years ago. If you're pitching this enclave, you told somebody in New York before, they wouldn't have been able to do it. But I'm all about transparency within our communities, right? But How do you go ask a colleague for help on something when they've been like, that sounds like great, I think I'll pitch it. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I guess I mean I've always found within our colleagues of, in the architectural world to be very, very supportive. I think, yes, sure, you can always run the risk of them being like, "Oh, I'll tell you, go in at this percentage, and I'll go write that guy for a percentage point less." Or, um, yeah, I don't think I've never experienced it being quite that cutthroat, but I think, just talking to them about, you did this more than anything. Um, Picking an example of a project that they've done that is similar in type and scale,
Mm.
and see if they're open to sharing it. And generally I find that, especially past, coworkers of mine or close friends in the industry, are very open. They love to talk about
Mm. Yes, yes,
their
yes.
projects and process. And, hopefully at the end of the, we help others and they help us. And at the end of the day, there's better products overall because of
Mm.
it.
Well, and it does attest to the power of relationships, right? That it's not a transaction. It's a conversation. It's a friendship. It's a relationship. And I also think the nuance in there that I missed is that you're not necessarily calling them to ask them to show you, teach you, help you propose this. You're calling on a colleague that has done a project of similar scale or style, and you're picking their brain about that project. What were the pitfalls? What were the challenges? What did you not know before you went into it? And, those types of things, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, and that is a different nuance. You're right, because we all do love to talk about ourselves. Let me tell you another thing about that thing we did. We were
Yes.
so good. No, that's awesome. I love that. I really do love that. And then when you talked about the A, B, C level finishes, did you mean that I know that you have those finishes in commercial projects, boutique projects and stuff like that. But were you describing that it's important at the outset to get agreement with the developer, who's the one who's going to ultimately have the hammer on the budget, that, okay, we can do this in this price point if we both agree that these areas are going to get A level, these are going to get B, and these are going to get C? Or that doesn't matter. You don't need her agreement. You just know that you're going to design in the 3 different levels throughout the space.
No, I think it's really important to get buy-in
Mm.
from everyone on sort of the diagrammatic plan
Mm.
before you jump into it. And then, I think in full transparency, architects who love to design, who are used to designing in the custom residential world, you know, need to know that the only place they're going to use their custom repertoire in their
Mm.
mind is in the A. And
Right.
so it's not work, then I think when you get to the B, it's like, here are some really great products that can help you achieve the scale and proportion and feel of the space, but they're not going to be in a position to go out and custom manufacture each of those pieces unless they become so repeatable. So I think that before you put pen to paper or mouse to computer screen, you need to have the diagram of how you're going to get there, and then make sure that you hold yourself accountable to that, where you're not over designing something that then they go in price and they're like, yeah, there's just no way,
Mm.
that's going to hit the mark.
And does that seem like to you something that a lesser experienced designer, or maybe just a designer with lesser business experience, is that sort of an Achilles heel that you've noticed, where it's almost like just because you can create something at this level doesn't mean it's appropriate to do. You have to keep the business side and the profitability side and the objectives aside, whether it is a commercial space or a residential space, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I guess just to clear, I'm in this particular instance, I would be less concerned about stressing it for the profitability of the architect, and more
For
for that it hits
the
the
budget.
budget
Yeah,
of
no, no,
the,
that's what I meant too.
yes, of the
Yes.
end user.
Yes.
Yes,
In other
I
words, you
think
don't want to be designing until midnight. This is the most amazing thing. Like, in other words, I could see an an eager wanting to make a great impression, has an opportunity to make a great impression, and forgets that they're designing towards budget, that somebody isn't just going to say, I told you $500,000 and I meant it. Like, oh, it's $500,000, but it's $1 million now. Like, it's a real thing that just because you're capable of designing it, you have to keep the business side front of mind for your end user, right?
Exactly. I mean, I think that's the risk of the um, the unveiling of a design to to a client. I think that's, we love to take the approach of that it's very collaborative, and that we're sitting down with ideas and kind of talking through, the getting them really excited about design vision, but pretty quickly tying that to make sure that it's, within their budget.
Mm-hmm.
Wade, I, he'll always say, I'm not looking for drawers full of beautiful drawings. I'm looking for projects to get built. And there's only one way to get those built, is to make sure that the client feels like it's, this is a huge investment on their side, and it's a big responsibility from ours to make sure that we hit their design vision and make it even better than they ever thought it could be, but making sure that, they're not sitting there in the process like, oh, I would have loved to build that, but they drew me something that was 5 times the cost that I really wanted, and I told them that. And so that doesn't make anyone feel great. And it's a very difficult balance, for visionaries and designers that could keep going forever and ever and add more towers and bridges and detail and anything that you want to add to the project. If it's not appropriate to the budget, I find that, you've kind of lost that trust at the most important part.
And the thing is, I know that this does happen at all levels of design. So we're talking about your level of, the most high-end luxury architecture, and you're saying, you've got to keep it in mind. And I like that you said that you do need the buy-in of the developer and the owners of the property and so forth, because if you decide that the lobby is going to get the A finishes, and the guest rooms are going to get the B finishes, and I don't know, the cafeteria is going to get the C finishes, I don't know, who knows, maybe they want the A finishes in all the guest rooms, right? Like, who knows? But the point is, if you don't all know it from the beginning, you're down a path that you have no idea you're on the right one, and you've wasted and burned a lot of time and a lot of energy. And that's where that disappointment and possibly that loss of trust comes in, because they feel like they weren't heard. And here it was, maybe you just didn't ask the right question, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
No. So, and what I was going to say about that was, I know it also happens at entry-level design. I remember, and if she's listening, she'll remember this story. This is going back about 4.5 years ago. I was working with a designer one-on-one, coaching her, and she called me and she said, I'm just so disappointed. And she said, I just lost a project that I really wanted to do. And I said, what happened? And she said, well, it was a nursery. And, I mean, the woman said to me that she wanted to put a new crib in the space, and she wanted to do new paint and, different things. And she said, and we hit it off, and I was just so excited, and it was going to be a little girl and all the things. And she said, and I went back with the plan, and she just looked at me and she was like, okay, I'll let you know. And she said, and I've been calling her and she doesn't call me back. And I said, and what kind of plan did you go back with? Oh, LuAnn, you should have seen it. It was beautiful. It had this beautiful chandelier and a new area rug. And we're going to do some, mural painting on this thing and all this. As I'm like, and she asked you for a crib, new paint color, and window treatments. And she said, well, yeah, but I mean, this would be amazing. And I said, she's either pissed because you didn't listen, or she's intimidated. You know what I mean? Because she thinks that now what she really wanted, and you told her on the phone before you got there, was what you could do was new paint, new crib, and new window treatments. And now she feels intimidated, possibly, that unless she does, in a $30,000 nursery, she can't work with you. You know what I mean? So it's that same sort of a thing, right, Kate?
It is. And, and it's such a fine line, because
because there's aspiration there too, right?
Well, there are. And we always call it, there's a little bit of scope creep, but when a client might come to us and say, I really want to build this new 6,000 square foot house here. And here's, I want to make sure that there are the, perfect views out to the water. And, the same thing, they'll paint the picture of exactly what they're thinking. And the opportunity might come up to be like, well, if you just purchase the property next door and then you could pair your buildings like this and the views become exponentially better. It's hard to know when showing that to a client is going to get you off where they're like, you are the best visionary ever. You saw what I wanted and you took it and you made it into something even more. And when they're like, you didn't listen. That's
Right.
not what I asked you for. And so I think that there is a fine line there to make sure that you're showing your value. I think clients come to us because we have, we're the professionals, and they might say, draw this up for me. But they're looking for us to, based
Mm.
on all of our experience and portfolio, to infuse and make it even better than what they might ask for, but to do it and make sure that they feel that they're being listened to and that it will still fit within their budget. So it's really complex, but
It
yes,
is. It is. But
yeah.
I think the nuance in there is when you're describing it, you're standing there in the property, blah, 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 and you just are wandering over and looking, and you're like, this might be the craziest idea you ever heard, but if you bought that plot of land, but nothing's done yet. It's a conversation, right? And if that person said, "Oh, my budget's $1 million," and they've got $3 million in the back pocket, okay, you're off to the races. But I think in this situation, it was more what we were talking about. It was over designing, over delivering. You see, this now, you have to your point when we were talking about ABC finishes coming in on budget for the developers and so forth, it's just because you're capable of it. It's getting agreement and understanding ahead of time and making sure you've listened. And yes, in conversation all day long. If you ask me, if I'm trying to sell you one drape, I'm going to see if I can sell you 20 all day long. But if you ask me for one drape, I don't come back with the proposal for 20. You know what I mean? Like I sort of tease it out there. And I would think in commercial, what you're doing, I think the lesson in all of this is it's even more because the budget is even more driven. It's in luxury, dealing with luxury consumers, residents. They could just change their mind if they want, right? Whereas in developmental projects and for projects for developers, there's going to be a pretty set budget there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, and all that we're discussing through all of this is that relationship you're building and the trust that you're building with the client. And I'd rather not move forward with the project, but be honest with somebody. What's going to not draw something for them and be like, oh, of course it's going to be $1 million. Of course it's going to be $1 million. And then you get to that breaking point and now they're like, but I just paid for these design services and you must have known from the beginning it was never going to be $1 million. Like you had to know that. And so, for us, it's all about this, building relationships with people, having those difficult discussions, when you have to have them, to make sure that everyone's on the same page, whether it's residential or commercial. And then, I feel like that even people that we have not moved forward in working with have referred us to other people to be like, you know what, I really trust them. Like they told me what I didn't want to hear, but they told me the truth and they've referred their friends.
Love it. I love it. And you know what you said in there? You had to know that. When you said you had to know that. And I have to tell you, that is where you have to get to in your business, by having the data, because you can't be surprised either as the designer by the time you plow through 8 hours of design work. Oh my God, this is amazing. And this is now $40,000 for this bedroom when their budget was 20. Like, you know what I'm saying, Kate? Like there's a point in your career, there's a point in your journey and when gaining knowledge when you really don't know it. Right?
Yes.
You really don't. But you have to get there and you have to do your due diligence. I believe on your off time, the way you read magazines on your off time or business books on your off time, you should be sourcing on your off time, understanding what do chandeliers cost? What do area rugs cost? What is my, favorite go-to line and what is the price point of them, right?
Yes, that's great. That's great advice. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I could ballpark you a window treatment all day long. I mean, I'm 40 years measuring and pricing window treatment. So when somebody sits there and says to me, "Oh, I'd really love to have the motorized solar shade and a room darkening blackout behind it, and I want motorized ripple fold draperies and a cornice and all of that," honest to God, in about 10 minutes, and I can't add and subtract to save my life, I can throw you a number that's going to be in the ballpark. And if I throw you that number, I'm like, we're looking about $12,000 for this one window. If I just have to pick you off the floor, so much better. Now, what are we stepping down from? I didn't go quote all this stuff. You didn't fall in love with it, right? It's that sort of thing. It's knowing your industry, knowing your products, knowing your services, right? And having a handle on it, because you need to be the expert in the space, right?
Yes. And I mean, coming off of this past year where things are fluctuating, more than I've ever seen them. It's knowing that in real time too,
Yes.
continually reaching out to your vendors and contractors and getting that real time data. If your entry point used to be 100 a square foot and now it's 200 a square foot, or
Mm.
your entry price of a, you know, let's not, get into lumber and all of it, each
Metal,
individual
lumber, all of it, right?
all of it, yes. And
Yeah.
so you don't want to be caught quoting something, in a different geographic area or a different time. So yes, you're exactly right. I think that's a really great point, is to always be doing that in your spare off time to make sure that you can stay very relevant.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You have to know. You have to be able to have at least an idea. So, okay. Now, one of the things that you mentioned was how to seek out growth opportunities for your firm and how to bring these opportunities to fruition through smart decisions. This was the sentence that you said to me. And so tell me what that means, Kate, and how do we go through this?
Yeah, so I think, as a firm right now, we seek out, we understand what's going to make us really excited as designers, when it's going into new opportunities, or new markets. And particularly the realm of design that we're in, it's a very tricky one to market for, because you kind of want to market by not marketing. You kind of want to be in the right place at the right time. You want to be someone's go-to person. And so I think our success in breaking into new geographic markets or new project types are to really take on and focus on one particular project,
Mm.
no matter the scale. Create all of the relationships that you possibly can and make sure that you value, even if the most exciting project on earth comes in the next week, to not that you're still giving that first project that you're focused on your full attention, so that in my view and in our view as a company, word of mouth far exceeds any kind type of paid marketing that we could ever do. And time and time again, we've seen that as a company. We began in the Midwest. A client took us out to the West Coast to do one project, and it was, one architect was going back and forth from Milwaukee, and that over time has turned into a full-time office out there that's staffed. And that only happened from one project and us trying to exceed everyone's expectations on that project, and finding the best local artisans and being so respectful to them about what they know about their craft, and finding really great collaborators and interior designers and landscape architects, and understanding the building code in our off time to make sure that we brought value to that process in a new place. And the next person that contractor's talking to is like, you have to hire this firm.
Mm.
And that's really what broke us into, like, complete different markets. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that as a strategy.
So if I hear you, it's really genius. So what you're saying is you get an opportunity. Maybe you create the opportunity through some actual other type of marketing, whether it be Instagram or whatever it is, or a referral. But when you have an opportunity for two different types of things, one is in a completely different geographic location. So this is an opportunity. Maybe it's a similar type of project you've done before, but it's in a new area. Or it could be a completely different type of project that you've never done before, like for your company doing the enclave or doing that mixed commercial space, right? Residential commercial space. But the thing about it is we don't phone it in. We don't say, oh my God, it's 3,000 miles away and we're not going to go every other day. We're like, we literally, like you said, you find the best local architects to work with, best landscape architects to work with, the best designers, the best artisans, all of the things. And you also said in there that you work to create relationships with these colleagues so that you are now part of that community. That's what I heard in there. Now you become part of them. You've shown them, tremendous respect. You've done all the things so that if the neighbor does want something, you're not the newcomer anymore. Now you're part of this colleagues and this professional colleagues because you haven't just flown in and flown out. You've actually decided to do it all with great intention.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I mean, because it's hard to do that. Like we could say, oh, that's of course I would do. And then I'm thinking to myself, no, we don't always do it. Sometimes we're like bringing our, thank God people bring their drapery person, window works on long jobs, long faraway jobs. But you know what I'm saying? Like it's so often we fly our people where we go. You know what I mean? Like, and we just rely on our same sources. But if you want to break to your point, into a new type of project or a new type of area, demographic, you do have to get entrenched in there. You just can't keep bringing all your same people, right?
Correct. Yes.
Now, is there a space where for parts of like if you think back to a project like that, where you're like, you know what, we didn't find anybody that's as good as, Joe Blow from home. We've got to bring them in. Like, there's a mix in that there, Kate, of the getting your feet on the ground with the local colleagues and your tried and true that you've used before.
Yeah, I think we have certainly been found in that, been in that position and, maybe tried to find a local, either artisan or designer collaborator that would sort of meet the client's expectations and not been able to find that person. And then I think we do bring along, with us people that we love to collaborate with that also have kind of a national scale and national brand with them. But I think, the more you can sort of infuse yourself into a new place, whether, and I'm not suggesting that every new location that we have a project that will eventually,
right.
Open an office
satellite office.
But, I think, we've circled around and thought of different ways of servicing a national brand. And some people do it out of one office. And we're currently finding success from having, a home base in the Midwest and then sort of a West Coast office that, or a stopping ground where, we can have our staff go out there, collaborators meet there, and then more to the East Coast as well to service the East Coast.
Well, I mean, I think it makes sense to have a mix of, look, if you have tried and true go-to guys and gals that you just know the stakes are high and you've got to bring them with you, that's always going to happen. But having the connections to the local people, trades, and so forth for the boots on the ground, the service level goes up. I mean, we do that at Windows. We did a project for Amber Interiors this past year at the Jersey Shore. Amazing house. She's all the way in Calabasas, right? Mm-hmm. So if their client needs service, if they brought their window treatment person in from California, it's going to be kind of hard to service it, right? So at least now she knows that we're going to be able to respond. And so I can see that a mix is good. It helps you in all the ways, not just in relationships, but in the servicing of the project once you're done with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you're in the best position when you can be like, I've got a guy to do that for, like
right.
when you can point somebody to the person that can do that. And I think there's a large value in anytime you can, both local to where you are, like you said, continually researching new products and vendors, but also knowing that on a national scale. I found that has really sort of brought a new level of people love it when it's, a store or a source outside of what everybody else might
Mm.
have, or the go-to place, when you can like you just said, if you can bring somebody that from the West Coast to a Jersey Shore house, and some particular expertise, that house is going to stand out against its
Right.
peers in a unique way.
Right, 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 right. Absolutely. Okay. And then another thing that, you talk about the importance of us as creatives to understand that we don't have to choose between our artistic talent and our business acumen, but we do have to address both. Talk to us a little bit about that, Kate.
Yeah, I mean, I have found a lot of personal fulfillment in wearing both of those hats. Daily, it might fluctuate one or the other. I have certain weeks where it's all, proposal and invoicing, and other weeks where you don't lift your head from the drawing board and or rendering and designs. And but I think, you strengthen all aspects of the project when you're considering both of those items in your decision making. Um, I think if you are too heavy handed, or just have, one person who's a non creative running the business side, I've seen a lot of successful companies that do that, but you run the risk of kind of always being, potentially butting heads when
Mm.
there's one creative and one business person. And I think the more we can all take ownership of the business side of the creative industries, the better. We understand our own worth. We, don't shortchange ourselves, and there's a lot of pride, that you take um, exceeding someone's expectations, coming away with a, first and foremost success to us when we do, look at that, forensic report, the autopsy of a project. The first one is not profit, for us. The first is, are the clients happy?
Mm.
What, are we walking away with, a relationship that is lifelong? And that's going to lead us into that, relationship with them that hopefully involves another project or great word of mouth. That's first and foremost. But then the profitability side does come into it as well. And so yeah, I mean, I think it's really important for people to not feel like, oh, I can't stop the my site meetings and drawing to stop and think about, where am I in the project? If I'm 50% through the fee, am I 50% through my drawings?
Mm.
I think those are really good checkpoints, throughout a process that, if you, put your head down for too long, you can lose sight of.
Mm. And your characterization there is I've noticed that over the years as well, that so often successful firms, by the way, will have the business head and the creative head, and maybe what we've heard is the positive part of that. I know we've had interviews with partnership teams like that, whether they're husband and wife. Oh, that's me and Vinny, by the way. We've had other partnerships that describe that, but if we don't always hear the other side of it, right? Like they're battling because somebody wants to spend money on something and somebody doesn't. And so when each person in the firm takes ownership and responsibility, at least a mental ownership and responsibility of the profitability, or the just even the business practices, then the whole thing is going to come out better, right?
Yes, yeah, I think, and we're probably stressing that because generally everyone else is creative. I don't think we would ever want, an office full of people that are just sitting around like, let me look at my hourly report, and am I, that's taking into consideration that creatives can't stop being creative unless they're reminded a little bit of, the constraints where they are. But yes, I think that that having that balance. And I know more and more in design schools and things, they're infusing a lot more business class and things in there, and it really just highlights kind of the skill set that I think really makes
Mm-hmm.
a successful designer thrive,
Mm-hmm.
especially thrive on their own in the future as a part of a successful company, is when you really can wear both of those hats.
And I love that line because any designer at any stage of their business life, brand new all the way to seasoned and C-suite designer firms, you that you one line. If I'm 50% through my retainer, am I 50% through the process here, right? Am I 50% through the retainer and only 10% through the process? So we got a problem, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's awesome. And I love that you said the benefit is when you do understand wearing the business hat and how important it is, that the benefit is understanding your worth. Then you really know what you're worth and you will charge it and you will stand for it and you will fight for it and you will happily work for it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. So one more question before I let you go. So you're an architecture firm. You have designers in-house. But it sounds like you sometimes also work with other design firms on projects. Is that the case, Kate?
It is, yes. More often than not, we are collaborating with, outside designers. Sometimes we're in the position where a client says, this is kind of the look I'm going for. These are things I'm drawn to. Can you make a few introductions or, do you have any suggestions? And then often, we'll have a client that wants to design a new home with us and they have as you said a fantastic interior designer that they might move around with them to all five of their homes or have worked with
Mm.
and they know that they know their style, but we love that. That's one of the most exciting parts to us are collaborating with fantastic interior designers. I think collective minds are so much stronger, and it's really important to us that there's that's a very collaborative approach without any sort of hierarchy. And we will sit down with a lot of interior designers, and sometimes it's like, do you want to draw interior elevations or do you want to help make selections, and we'll draw the interior elevations. We
Mm.
don't kind of have a one size fits all product to that. We like to understand what's their skill set, what's capacity do they have, and how can we help support, um, to make sure that it's such a cohesive, beautiful product at the end of the day. Because that's going to make the clients happy and also make the beautiful picture. The
Yeah.
photography at the end. There's nothing worse than a great house with bad interiors, or great interiors in a bad house. So
Right, right. Well,
it's
you sound like a dream. If I had a nickel for every designer that said to me, "How do I approach an architecture firm? How do I develop a relationship with an architecture firm? How do I strike up a conversation, a mentorship, or anything with an architecture firm?" And we just need them all to be like you. Like, we love this relationship. Well, how do you want to do it? You want to draw? You want us to draw it? Like, we need 16,000 more of you. Again, what does it come down to, right? Relationships. You wrote that in your email to me several times, that it's creating and building relationships, right?
Yes, yes. And that's what I mean. Sometimes people, will say like, what was the most informative class, or who was your most informative mentor? And I really, at the end of the day, I think what, you know, particularly at Wade and the sort of the culture of our firm, it's those things that nobody taught you. It's that relationships and people are really important, and connecting with people and stopping and listening and talking to every person on the job, and making sure that's not just lip service, but that that's really how we act. So I that's great. I haven't ever heard such a great response to that, because I think that's just how everyone should be when it comes to working collaboratively. But that yes, I think that's how we do it, and how I think that word of mouth is spreading, and we've been able to grow over the last 25 years.
Mm. Well, you know what it is? I think it's the same old thing. We sometimes can imagine that the other person, entity, company, business, whatever it is, really doesn't care. But I use it again on my level with window treatments. And I would say to the designers, like, I'm looking for new business. I'm just starting my company. I'm not sure how to do it. And I'll say, go to your local window treatment retailer like mine. Go to your local tile shop and say, "Hey, I'm a designer. I would be happy to help you with your clients. I would be happy to be a resource for you. I'd be happy to do a lunch and learn for you." And they've looked at me like, oh, I mean, I don't know. Why would I do that? And I'm like, if a designer walked into me and said these things, I'd be like, yay, hallelujah. Like, you have to realize that we're looking for that relationship too, is my point, right? You're looking for the relationship with the designer, right?
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, the walls are tumbling down. We are all crossing over and talking more and helping more and supporting more each day and each week and each month as it goes by. That's for sure. So it's really awesome.
Yes, for sure. I think, those teams, as great teams come together, I think better and better, buildings are being built, and, just some amazing spaces are being created when you look at, and how easily they're shared now. I just drool over over fantastic stuff that's happening, exactly by great collaborations.
Exactly. Well, Kate, before you go, tell people how they can get to your website to see what your firm is doing, and if they want to reach out to you, how do they do all that?
Sure, you can definitely go to our website. It's just wadeweissmanarchitecture.com. Um, Weissman has two S's and two N's in it. And my contact is actually on the page there. So,
Great.
yes.
Well, because you don't know who might need an architect in one of the areas that you're working in, and we may as well make the connections here. So,
Yes. Well,
yeah.
thank you for that.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us. It's nice to have the conversation with you and to see. And I think it does illustrate not only some really good points about how to evaluate potential projects and understanding that we need our data in order to be able to go through and recognize if a project really is a good fit for our firm, but also the value and the importance of building relationships across our different expertises and our different professions. It's really the way we're all going to get better everything, and in everything we do, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And well, thank you so much. This was a really great conversation. Thanks so much for inviting me to talk.
All right, Kate, have a great day.
I will, for sure. Thank you.
I mentioned at the top of the show a couple of questions that I often get asked when I meet you in real life. And they're usually followed up, or can be followed up, with descriptions of feeling stuck, of feeling like you've hit a plateau, of feeling a desire to expand, to maybe reach for a different type of project or larger projects, but you're not sure how to do it, right? And how do you say to somebody, I'm capable of doing this next level project, without having the experience and the proof to say that you've done it, right? It's a chicken or an egg, right? So I love Kate's advice in this area. It's going to come down to presenting a good proposal, right? So that, you might need to still prove to yourself and to the world that you can do this project, but it begins with the proposal looking and being professional. And it also, for your sake and the financial health of your firm, the proposal should be solid, so that if you do get the job, that you are going to make the right margins on it, right? And so her advice is so practical: to take it in bite-sized pieces, use your existing metrics and map it out and just blow it up for a different scale, right? And the good thing about this is it's not just a shot in the dark. You're not just saying, well, I think this is what it would be, right? You're using your data to justify what you're doing. You got to put a little logic to it. You got to put a little, hope and a prayer to it, but at least you're rooting it in something that's factual and real, that is based on things that you have completed before. Okay, I like that. And this really comes back to the importance of having your own data, right? We've talked about the autopsy of a project before. If you are consistently tracking your projects, which I hope you are, you should have your own little, data sheet, like an Excel spreadsheet. I don't care if it's notebook on your desk, but it says every time I do a primary bedroom, here, bedroom Sally Smith, primary bedroom, I don't know how many square feet a bedroom should be. I have a slight idea. But X amount of square feet, 16 hours. Jenny Jones, X amount of square feet, primary bedroom, 24 hours. If you do this, when you look back over the weeks, months, and years, and like in WindowWorks' case, now it's 40 years of data, you see the trends. And there's always going to be that enigma, that anomaly, but you're going to say, oh yeah, that was because of XYZ. But when you look back and you see out of 10 projects, 10 primary bedroom design schemes took 18 hours. I have no idea how long it takes. I'm just saying a number, right? They took between 18 and 22 hours. Well, I think you can pretty much assume that that's what it takes, right? And so this is why you must do the autopsy, because if you look at a project when it's completed, and you look back to what you estimated the primary bedroom, the primary bathroom, the kitchen, and you said 10 hours, 12 hours, 18 hours, and then you go back and you look at the project right then when it's done, not 2 years later, and you say, oh, I said it would take me, 12 hours to do the bathroom, but it took 17. And I said it would take 23 to do the kitchen, but it took 28. When you start to do this, you realize that maybe you're being optimistic on the front and you're not really charging the hours you should. And this goes for whether you're doing flat fee or hourly, because your flat fee is based on the hours you expect to put in, right? So, but if, what happens now is now you course correct. You don't go years with undercharging. You, after 2 or 3 primary bedrooms, if you're consistently underestimating, you're just like, oh, let's make a change here. So, and then to bring it back to Kate, what Kate is saying, when you have an opportunity to do a much different, larger project, take what you know, build from that, and then map it and blow it out so that at least there's something that it's based on. Okay. I love that. And I also love that Kate mentioned, to reach out to other firms that have done similar projects, all right? She's not talking about calling up your competitors and basically offering up your clients on a silver platter, right? That was what I was thinking. I was like, how do you do that, right? So she's talking about, talking to those relationships, the people that you've cultivated the network with over the years and say, oh, I see you did this project 10 years ago, 2 years ago. What does that look like? Da-da-da-da-da, all right? And this comes to the importance about building the relationships, right? So that you have people that you can call for inside advice, whether you meet someone at High Point or through LuAnn University, right? It's cultivating the people that you have a little sync with, and then nurturing that relationship. So when the time comes, you can help each other out. All right. And then as far as finding those new opportunities, those projects where you are going into a different way or you're just leveling up, okay? That comes down to your reputation. You want your reputation, no matter what you do, to always be pristine, because whether you've only ever done single rooms before and you're striving to do a full first floor, or you've only done 2 or 3 rooms and you're striving to do a whole house, or you've only done residential and you want to make a crossover into commercial, until you've got that next type of project under your belt, what are you offering up as your proof? You're offering up your reputation. And it doesn't matter now if your reputation is in a different type of project, because reputation matters in all work that you do. Okay. So I think that's awesome. I love it. I loved your idea about building relationships with the vendors in different areas if you're taking on projects in different states. Of course, I've said to you before, we're so lucky at Window Works. We've had Amber Interiors reach out from California for a job that she's done on the Jersey Shore. We've had other Jean Stouffer out in the Midwest. We've done projects for her here in New Jersey. There's many of you, thankfully, that have reached out to us to do the projects and the opportunities that you have here. And so what happens is when each of these designers that I just mentioned and many others, if their client calls them 6 months, 2 years after the job's done and says, hey, my Roman shade, the cord is broken. Well, if they're only using the window treatment person back where they are, how are they getting that fixed, right? So, I'm all for taking your vendors where you go, because I love it when I get taken, right? But there is times and places that when the complexity of the job, I think that's sort of what it is, warrants having some boots on the ground. And that is what Kate is talking about, is creating those relationships with the local vendor pool so that you're strengthened with your consumer, right? With your client, that you have, better resources and can give better service. Okay. Now, one last takeaway that I want to emphasize that Kate mentioned is when you're breaking into a new type of project or a new area of whatever it is, geographic area or area of business, you want to make sure that the profitability is there, that the project is viable for you. But sometimes, she said, they will consider a lower profit margin on some of these projects because either they're going to be expanding and creating some awareness in that area and expect to get new clients. So it's marketing, right? Or they're expanding their skills and the type of project under their umbrella, and that's good for them because that will attract more of that thing. The idea is that they're doing it for very specific reasons. They're not just saying, hey, we can't make as much money here, so that's okay, but because this is exciting to do a project in, a different city, different state, a feather in our cap. There are some measurable reasons why. And of course, always striving for the maximum profitability. But that little caveat was interesting, I thought, that she shared with us. Okay. And then again, the other thing is, Kate said, people are always like, how do I work with architects? And she's saying, we want to work with you, right? We want to know you. We want to collaborate with you. We want to build relationships with you. So sometimes all it takes is reaching out. You guys heard Jessica Madison's episode a month or so ago. And I have to say, Jessica Madison, she's a landscape architect. She does this consistently. She's been my chairman of the board for the last year. I've coached with her off and on for about 3 years. She consistently reaches out to strangers and acquaintances alike and rekindles the relationship, starts a relationship, and just says, here's what I am, here's what I do. If I can help you or serve you in any capacity on your projects, my hand is up. So, all of us need all the people. It takes a village to create a design project, right? So Kate is telling you, as architects, they want the relationships with you. So if you have a list of architects in your area that you've always thought, I wish I could reach out, I wish I had a relationship, and you've hesitated, just do it. Just do it. Just call them up. Do it old school. Make a phone call, right? So I love it. I think it's awesome. Great advice. Kate, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this with us today. All right. So I hope I will see you in High Point, fall October 21. Please join me. We're having a little soiree that we're throwing on October 14th at Pandora's Manor. The party is sponsored by our friends at Revelwoods, and we are so lucky to be their guests. So the party is free for you, okay? But you must RSVP. Space is limited. It's going to be a good size party. It's not like just a few people, but it is limited because Pandora's Manor is only so big, okay? So RSVPs are 100% necessary, but would love, love, love to see you. So if you're going to be in High Point October 14th, come to our party at Pandora's Manor, and just really super, super huge shout out and thanks to Revelwoods for making this possible for us, okay? You can find the RSVP link in the show notes for this episode, or you can go to the link tree in my Instagram bio at LuAnn Nigara. All right? I have to tell you, I, for one, am really, really looking forward to seeing you in real life, okay? This extrovert is over it. I want to see your faces, all right? All right, thank you so much for showing up today. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.